Hello everybody, welcome back to another breakdown, and today we are doing a commercial. I think this sets the record for the longest commercial that we have ever broken down here, and that's not to say we're going to break down every single scene from it, right? It's 6 minutes long. Somebody out there is doing a 6-minute long commercial, and it isn't even the type of cinematography that I'm normally gravitating towards. So stuff that we probably wouldn't even break this down on the channel just because there's a bunch of elements where maybe it's not my pick for what would be really, really high level stuff. I guess the thing that we have to remember here is that the commercials that I like are usually shot by the people that are at the absolute tip of the spear, right? These are people that are producing phenomenal results that are not normal. This is why people at this level are working, because they're that good. So you get a little bit spoiled with how good cinematography can be and what it can add, and the shape and just the refinement in the image. Whereas, just one step down, which people are still working at a high level, it isn't quite as, I don't know, it just doesn't all come together. So maybe this is not a knock on this specific commercial. It's just something to remember. As we're looking at this stuff, if your stuff doesn't look like this, that's normal, right? You're probably not that good. Maybe one day you'll get that good, but it takes lots of practice, experience, knowing how to look at images and break them down and figure out, what do I want to do here? What do I want to say? And what are the tools that can allow me to say those things? Okay. So this is, I think it's an Audi commercial, and we'll just play through it here as I talk. Shot anamorphic, lots of different cars, but really the thing that is a little bit different than what we would normally see in the commercials we break down is just the levels of just how hot things are and where the distribution is in the exposure. Not even so much the lighting angles and where the light is coming from, but just some of the choices with lenses and where the light comes from are just slightly different than what we normally see here. So the first thing, right, as we go through, is just how hot these initial images are, and a little bit blown out, okay. But this is like the whole image is lifted, and there is something about that you can feel. It's slightly different. I mean, if we pause it here on this, right, like these levels, okay, they're, it's day, it's outside. It's this kind of stuff here. Where is it? Like this big chunk here, and then that raises everything up really high. So it's just like, you could almost just bring everything down as long as you don't clip, right? Because if you clip and then you try and bring down, it doesn't look nice, right? If you just pull down with the offset, it doesn't look nice because that clip is always gonna be there, right? That big chunk of nothingness. Whereas if that isn't there, if you're able to hold it on the day in the camera, which with a lot of the modern cameras, man, you have 14 stops, that's a lot. It can be sometimes really difficult to make something clip. It's always there, and you can always massage it. And then you can, if you want to bring up the face, you can bring up the face there. You're giving yourself more options, which it's just a creative choice, I guess. Some people like some images and some people like others. So we scroll through, lots of studio stuff in here, which is nice. You can check out the ad for yourself if you want. Again, it's a long one, but just the levels are slightly different, slightly off, right? Lots and lots of hot stuff here. Like lots of hot here, lots of hot. Why is the pen so big? Let's fix that before I go crazy. Just lots of heat. Lots of heat all over the image. And then the blacks are not, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like it. I don't know. That's just me. I really like this section here though. This is good. This is like in the framework, the car is doing the work for you, right? Because you can't get any light in up here. You can't get any light in up here. It has to come through the window, and then over here is dark, right? Because you got the car over there, which is blocking all this light. So you get this beautiful shape on the face. And then that, balanced against the background, this feels natural. Why? Because it is natural, right? This is just how the lighting looks on the day if you get it right. If you were gonna light this now, imagine you weren't moving the car, right? And this is just parked. And then you just get that little voice in the back of your head. Why don't you just put an M40 over here and then soften it off, get it nice and big, and then push it in there. And then you might see this exposure bump up by like half a stop, right? Half a stop inside, and then all of a sudden it starts to look a little bit stagey and you don't quite know. And then maybe you say, oh, they can just bring it down in the grade. And then you see the final cut and they didn't bring it down. And it looks like, it looks horrendous. So always err on what is natural. And this is the natural look, right? This level compared to this background in the grade, you just bring this up and then window everything else down all around the car, so people's eyes are just immediately drawn in there, right? That's where you want them to look. But let's get back to the part that I actually wanted to talk about here. So this is, this is like your classic studio trick, and you see this a bunch in this commercial, where if you're gonna shoot on a stage, you got a few different options. You're either gonna comp in something out there and then hold that level, and then if you are gonna comp in and hold that level, you have to put your light somewhere where it can't be seen through the window, right? So you're lighting that way with that key, rather than if you put the lamp there and you're lighting this way into the camera, well, then you really have no choice, right? It's gonna blow out. It's gonna look like this, right? Which is not something I wouldn't immediately go to. Let's do this, right? I'd be like, oh, can we comp something out there? Can we, I don't know, can we do something else to make it not blown out? Because that ends up being really harsh. And then the blacks sit in that raised spot, right? And a lot of times it's like, well, it's going to be vintage, or it's supposed to be a flashback of some kind, so let's raise the blacks a little bit. But you just feel that the whole image feels a little bit more washy, not as defined when that happens. So we got this window here. Rather than lighting over here with the lamp back here so you can't see the lamp and then be able to hold this level, this is lighting right through here, right? You can see it all in here. And then we're using something to bounce the light back in here for his face, right? But this is the big choice here, is what are you going to do with those windows on stage? Because in location, this is easy to get around because you could actually shoot outside and you could see out there and you don't have to worry about VFX. You can just place this lamp anywhere as long as it's not in the window and the shot isn't moving to see it. You can place it anywhere, right? Normally what you would do is you're going to place it on the back side here. And I'll go full screen now that we can. Let's do cursor, full screen. Why isn't that working? There we go. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is probably, if you're on location, lamp over here, you got your M90 and you're pumping it here, and you're going to create some sort of interesting pattern here. So it's not just a wash, right? There's a little bit of light to dark, but the values are so close because of the haze or whatever is going on here, because of the haziness in the lens. If you're going to go right down the pipe with the light, right, it's going to haze up the lens a little bit on older vintage stuff, or the type of diffusion that you have in front of the lens. But then it all feels just a little bit so close together that it's hard to pick a point of interest, right? Like his face, which, we always talk about being almost close to the hottest thing in the image, ends up competing against this level, right? We're just immediately drawn to that. So M90, you park back there, get some pattern, then that gets darkness where the pattern doesn't show up. And then you can still do this technique where you're up here with some light wrapping this way to balance whatever is on that back wall. But it's just, it can just come together a little bit smoother. And we go forward, right? A little bit, it's also that softening filter. But here you get the same, this is frameworky stuff here. Because we've set up that backlight in that shot, we come in here and all we do is we soften the light, right? Just soften it off, and then you can play that through. A little hand move. And then this stuff here, it's like, oof, it's hot. It's really hot, and it's inside, and then really filly, and then it just gets flat across the whole thing. Like this level is almost the same as this level, So you don't really know where to look, and the focus also kind of doesn't help. Like the craziness of the focus, this is really hot, right? Not a lot of nuance there. Now this one, now you're talking, okay? Now we got lots of things here. We don't care about you, it's not your commercial. It's this little guy's commercial, right? This is like the poltergeist scene. You got interest back here. You got practicals on during the day, even though we got daytime streaming in. You got interesting textures on the set. This guy that is fairly dark and down. Around him, we have this nice little hotspot area of interest. We sort of filled it in, lots and lots of haze, which sometimes makes it, gives you this murky look. But then we are framing the image with dark to camera, light above, dark to camera, light on this side, dark to camera, a little bit of an edge. TV is wooden, wallpaper, paintings to not be white, practical lamp on, this in the foreground, just creating those little elements and then having as much depth as you can back there. So getting like, this is almost like three suns though are coming in, right? Because you got light coming this way, which is making that shaft, but then somehow light going this way, which is creating this hard light, right? Like this little guy, this whole family lives on Tatooine. It's like lots of suns everywhere. So but this is kind of cool, right? You're low to the ground, you got all the right angles, you're shooting into the L of the room here to create that depth, and it just feels really nice. This shot feels really nice. As we keep going, I think there's a close-up. Now you are talking. Yes, please. And does he bring it down from his face? No, he doesn't. Let's go back a little. Right? It's like this one. Okay. Now, this shot should look familiar. Upstage key. Nice little line right down the face. A little bit of a leak over here. Eye light, shadow. Little something this way. You can feel it. Just a hint on the neck. And then, like that's our foreground element, right? Or that's our main action. Now, this frame size, you don't really have a room in this scene to put anything in here. We're just a little bit too close to this guy. It would feel weird if something was layered in there. But in the background, again, we got nice little not competing with the eye. The hottest part of the image is behind the dark side of his head, right? So we don't want to distract from there. So we have the curtains there, which are significantly lower in level. And that means that this sticks out, right? So key, neg, little back, and then set this key, that level, needs to be just a little bit above the room tone. Whatever the ambient is. Now in a studio, this is really, really simple, right? You put something overhead with a little grid on it, right? You got a 20 by or a 12 by, depending on the size of the room. You put a grid on it. You put some sky panels up there. You sitting with your gaffer and you're going, hey, bring down the room tone just a little bit, or bring up the room tone to make it feel closer together. The room tone key ratio is really what makes something feel believable and makes it have that expanded toe, that range of the waveform where it just feels a little bit fatter and thicker, which is nice, right? That's what you want. It feels really good in that area. So this is a nice looking frame. There was one more I wanted to do before we stopped. Oh, this is again the room thing and creative choices, right? So, I mean, giant blowout. What are you gonna do? This is framework lighting right to camera. So key, neg, little edge, right? Key, neg, little edge. Going closer, you start to feel the warpiness of these anamorphics. Ooh, see how it bows around the edges there? And this thing feels like, the TV feels like it's coming out. It feels like it's coming at you. But look at, when you don't shoot into the L of the room, just based on location, see how flat it can feel? Versus, I'm trying to think of, maybe the one we did, the first 4x3 one we did a couple weeks ago, where you're shooting into that TV and you're shooting into the L of the room, it just makes it feel like there's a little bit more depth to the room rather than just, you know, plonk, flat. And then we're back on his face. Now this is that little leak. This little leak on the side, you gotta be careful with, because sometimes, and you might see it on me sometimes when I'm not paying attention, this little leak over here, sometimes you can't get it far enough around this way on the image. So what that means is you have to go too far, you push it closer to camera, and it might hit your nose, and that is not, it doesn't look nice. So there's one specific area, one specific angle where you can get this light, especially in anamorphic. Sometimes with anamorphic, you have to go above the frame and do this because you can't get the lamp close enough this way to not hit the nose, right? You have to come around too far to the side and it becomes more like a side light to do this. So you got two options. You can either go above with anamorphic and try and scrape it in that way. You can just push it to the edge and see where it gets you, right? Or you can miss behind the talent. So say the light is over here in the corner and you can put it at the right angle and you end up hitting this nose a little bit and it comes out like a little, I don't know if you can see it on mine. You can, right there. That thing, right? You don't want that. So you can either, you just miss behind his head so that this is the left-hand edge of the light rather than the middle of the light and you're hitting his nose. But this is again one of those things where, okay, let's get the first problem here. I would be like, okay, let's fix these windows. After that, I would say, okay, let's get the key in the right spot. Yeah, let's get the level in the right spot. Let's get the neg there. We know it's always gonna be there, so the people are building the neg while you're doing the key light. Once you get that in, then it's like, okay, now let's go to the backlight. And getting it off the nose would be like the last thing before we start shooting because there's so much craziness going on set. It's like, okay, no, I can see it on his nose. Let's get it off of there. Go in. This is another one where, again, the levels, it's just really lifted and it's hard to define where to look because the room tone is so hot and it's such a wash across the whole frame. So it's just all sort of the same. and even bringing the light from the camera side, right? This is light over here that is pushed in. That you could do this a couple different ways. I would try and go slightly less level back there because we want the people looking here and here, right? So you want to draw their attention there. So maybe go slightly smaller on the pattern, right? And then come from above, and you can do your return from above like they've done. You see that little bit on his head and on his cheek. And then this warm light that is coming this way, I would just play it. You could play it more down. You could play it more down, which would then just create this shape rather than having it all filled in. Same over here, have it not as filled in. And then you could have up here darker, because in here you've gone with the slash. Or maybe you stop the slash here, you know, and just that way you're just separating the values a little bit more. It all seems a little bit very close together and very hot. I think that's it. You can see again, leak, key. You can actually see the fixture there and see how this, when it's not blown out and you can't see it, just feels a lot more, it feels richer, more dense. And then the last one was the car. Where is it? Like this little section here, man. This is good, right? You got that one. That one, that was great. And that one, even that. Right there, same thing, right? Like perfect. You got no, there's not harsh sun that is coming in this way. It's just, it's like high cloud sun that is coming in this way and creates this perfect little window. Neg in here, you up that in the grade. You focus everybody's attention here and you drop all these outside levels. As long as you don't clip the sky, right? If you clip the sky, the whole gig is up. And it's people are gonna be able to tell. But if you clip the sky and you're shooting with an Alexa or a Red or the Venice or any of those cameras that have crazy dynamic range, you've done something wrong. It's really hard to do. So anyway, that's the look. Like I said, it's something maybe that we wouldn't normally be looking at this stuff on the breakdowns because it's not, you know, in the wheelhouse of what I would say is my type of cinematography, but still a really good job. Lots of interesting little angles, and you know, yeah, you have the ability to choose if you like a certain style or you like it slightly more lifted, or you want to see values closer together. Well, this is that example, and you can take this away and go, okay, well, I know if I want this effect now, I know how to get it, right? You just bring those values closer together, closer towards the middle, and then raise them up on the histogram or on the waveform if you're looking at it. Right? It's all about understanding what you do and don't like and then working towards, okay, well, how do we do that? Like, how do we separate those values? If we want to not blow out studio windows, do we have to have those conversations before we get there? Because if we wait too long, maybe people haven't factored in that cost of what the VFX is going to cost, or if we're going to do like rear projection or something like that, what are we going to do? Do we need an LED wall out there? How are we going to get level in those windows that play such a prominent role in the beginning of those shots? Same with the schedules here. It's like there's a shot, where is it? Outside, like this one, right? Like, okay, this is not backlit. Hard to backlight this location, this house, because it's so big, and this is the frame that we've chosen to go with. So we go with this front light, and you get that hazy, you know, like vintagey look, and then she's in white as well. We go really hot on the skin tones. It's like, and then, you know, you can see when you go front light, everything is lit up, so it's really hard to define areas where to look because everything is just lit up. There's not a lot of shadow even in here. So it can be tricky, but that's something, you know, it's a creative choice that you make, and then you schedule accordingly. You know that, okay, if we want this look, well, you can't have the sun over here, or you're not going to get this look, right? You can have the sun over here, but you can't have it over here behind the house. You can't have it on this side of the house. It's just deciding what you want and then working towards it and getting there. Okay, that is going to do it for this breakdown. If you've got suggestions for clips you want to see broken down, leave them in the comments, and we will see you in the next one. Goodbye.